How's it going, everybody? It's Guillermo from Screen Realm here. You're about to watch an interview I was lucky enough to conduct with director Andrew Traucki, whose credits include Blackwater, The Reef, The ABCs of Death, and more. Here we talk about his new film, The Reef Stalked, a standalone follow-up to his 2010 film, The Reef, and it finds the filmmaker back in the water once again facing sharks. The plot follows Nick, who, in an effort to heal after witnessing her sister's horrific murder, travels to a tropical resort with her friends for a kayaking and diving adventure. Only hours into their expedition, the women are stalked and then attacked by a great white shark. In the interview ahead, we talk about filming in Queensland, the challenges with filming in water and sun, and actually dealing with real life sharks. We also talk about the theme of domestic violence and PTSD that the film has within it, and among other things, we talk about the Australian film industry and the shortcomings it has when it comes to competing on the world stage. Hope you enjoy the interview and keep an eye out for The Reef Stalked. It hits Australian cinemas on July 28th. First of all, I'll say congratulations because I think that just getting a movie made alone deserves congratulations. So well done, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's been around 12 years since you tackled sharks with The Reef. Yep. What made you dive back in to face sharks once again?
Although the original Reef, really set me off as a guy who can make a shark film, all the scripts that were coming my way weren't really what I wanted to make. Though a lot of them, there's a lot of shark films out there that are very shark exploitation, I call it. They're just there to be silly and sort of just be craziness. So none of those really appealed to me because I kind of, The Reef for me was about reality and what would you do if you're in this situation. That was the game I was playing and being tense. And then quite a few years ago, I went and saw a play called Lethal Indifference, which is all about domestic violence. And that really stuck with me. And then I'm a surfer and, surfers talk about sharks. One of the terms they call sharks is the man in the gray suit. So all of a sudden I had this sort of thing where I could maybe write a more interesting script where the shark film becomes an allegory for domestic violence. And so you have, the man in the grey suit is what the women have to fend off. And so that was an idea that really did intrigue me. And I thought, wow, maybe I can write an more elevated thriller around this. And so that's what set me off, really.
And any particular elements of the domestic violence side, PTSD side that you wanted to explore? And why do you think that putting it in this kind of avenue, this kind of genre avenue, was an interesting way to tackle it?
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting because I say there's the analogy between shark being the man in the grey suit and, a lot of domestic violence is men against women. So that was the thing I could see coming through there. And in terms of what one more singular or definite message I wanted to explore is sort of, it's a complicated area and I don't profess to know everything, but I just kind of got the feeling by doing all my reading and research that the way through it is through collaboration and through people helping each other and not being quiet. And so that was kind of what I was trying to get at, that the women to survive have to pull together.
I want to talk about just the filming of this. So you filmed it in far north Queensland, beautiful location, but obviously still filled with the elements, sun and water, etc. How was it filming there? Was it challenging? Was it?
Yeah, no, it was very challenging. Water always is. Like, they always say don't work in water and with kids, and I work with both.
Yeah, you did.
So yeah, it was really challenging. A lot of the day would start with me getting into a wetsuit at 6 o'clock, and then 10 hours later or 12 hours later, I'd be getting out of that wetsuit after standing in water all day. So that's not, not something your body really enjoys. And then, of course, as you say, you're totally open to the elements. So if it's raining, which it did rain, you lose time. If it's windy, every morning you get up and stare at that weather app, wondering what's going to come today. And then, of course, because you're in the ocean, there are actually live animals in there. So one day a shark was actually on set. We weren't actually in the water, but we were on next to the water, and this, just small reef shark cruised by, which was it's like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, the film could become kind of a documentary now.
Yeah, so almost. Yeah, insane. And then another time, a crew member trod on a ray and got a barb in her leg, which is extremely painful. So, yeah, it was very live and very it was difficult because water is difficult.
Obviously, you have a lot more experience now as a filmmaker dealing with productions. How does this compare compared to The Reef, the first time you tackled The Reef?
Well, look, actually, in terms of production, it was just as difficult. I was happy that the story for me felt like it had more relationship depth and those sorts of things. So it was interesting to work on that. And that's what I was very interested in. Of course, I have to make the sharks work and all that, the thrilling part of it as well. But quite frankly, when I compare the two, I think they were just as difficult as each other. I mean, each film
Really?
brings its challenges, and being in water means that you are going to be challenged. I think my experiences where it sort of helped a lot more was just in terms of me not freaking out so much. I guess I know I've done it before and I'm going to get through it, and just also hopefully being able to bring a bit more to the story.
So your resume of films has people facing sharks and crocodiles. What is it about humanity taking on nature's beasts for survival that attracts you?
Yeah, look, I just like really good, excuse me, thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
That's my shtick. These survival thrillers I enjoy because I don't know about you, but I love sitting there going, what would I do in this situation? Trying to work out whether I could or couldn't survive, like in Blackwater, should I go down the tree or shouldn't I? And so that's also a great game. But yeah, I know it's just more the thriller aspect. And Australia is really known, overseas, we've got this sort of last frontier, more dangerous animals than you can poke a stick at sort of image. So people from overseas love the notion that we're this exotic, dangerous country. So that also helps sort of get the films up, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to tackle every animal, you could have a huge library of films here.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a favorite person versus beast animal movie that has attracted you over the years, perhaps served as an influence, or even a bunch of movies?
Yeah, there was, look, obviously Jaws, you have to mention Jaws, and Open Water was a great film too, I thought. There was one, what was it called? I think The Edge was a bear movie, actually. That one I thought was pretty cool. And I don't know if it's really animals because it's more supernatural, but, Dog Soldiers was kind of interesting. But, yeah, I don't know. I think they're sort of the ones.
When you're making your own film, are you influenced by other films? Do you take that into account, or do you try to tunnel vision them out so that you can make your own kind of craft?
Yeah. Look, I think you're always influenced by what's come before you. I think it's almost impossible not to be. But, in case of Jaws, I was trying to be, especially the first Reef, as different to that as possible because you can't compete with that. That film's a culture into itself, it started the blockbuster and everything. So it's impossible to compete. So with that film, I was going, what can I do to be the opposite of Jaws? So keep it real, don't sort of be overly dramatic. Yeah, look, you definitely, I think, absorb a lot of influences as you go along with your writing and then the directing. And it's, yeah, but once, like the good thing with this is because I had the first Reef and I knew I wanted to make it the same style. That was my main reference. So yeah.
Working with a cast in this kind of film, trying to deal with emotional dynamics as well as just the physicality of it all. How was that balance? Did the cast have a decent time, or was it a pretty stressful time?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, it was a very short shoot because we got rained out a few days, so it was stressful just from the amount of time we had. Like being in the water, that consumes a lot of time. But they were great. We did a week's rehearsal before we started filming on location, which was really, really, really helpful. That's where they bonded, and that's where the whole friendship and relationship started to become more real and dynamic. So they were great. The physicality of it all was sometimes difficult, because we're out in the water all day and actors have to worry about their skin and makeup and all those sorts of things. So that becomes a big deal at times, especially if some of them are getting burnt or getting, sort of lashed by the sweat, by the elements. But really, on the whole, they just really came to the party and gave it their all. So that was really, really satisfying.
Fantastic. And just to wrap it up, one big question that might be a bit hard to answer in a succinct manner, but as an Australian filmmaker that's managed to craft a number of films locally, what are some of the main elements that you think are holding back this genre element in Australian cinema, let alone Australian cinema overall? It's just not big enough. I think we all agree on that. Are there any particular things, maybe 2 or 3 things that you think are the drawbacks here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, it seems to me, and look, it depends. If you're talking specifically about animal survival thrillers, I guess that's a small subset of the genre. We don't have the population like America or a place like that. Although that Spain and places in Europe love these sort of films. They sort of have more of a, I don't know if it's a dark sensibility, but they've got more of an interest in thrillers and horrors. Yeah, it's an interesting question because I do think we don't have much luck with the funding bodies here. I mean, we did with Screen Queensland, but not with Screen Australia. They're sort of pushing us a sort of different style of film, I guess. And I just imagine that Australian population hasn't got quite the size to have the subculture that, you know. But having said that, like, I consider this film not to be a horror film, but to be a thriller. And, you know, there should be enough people to want to see that because, you know, not only is it a thriller, it's a shark thriller. I think overall the Australian industry suffers just from the lack of marketing, and that we're dominated by America. You know, when America comes out, like, you know, the latest Thor movie or whatever, it's probably got $50 million in marketing or something, whereas a film like this has, you know, gotten very, very little in marketing left, because by the time you've gone through the production process, you've got very little money left. So it's very hard when you're up against films, you know, and everyone pays the same amount to go into the cinema. It's not like you pay more to see an American, you know, it's the same price, but the Americans, you know, those big blockbusters have just got so much marketing, so much production value. Whereas a film like this, you know, you've really got to work it on other angles because you're just not going to compete against that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like it's quite unfortunate that it's become quite stagnant and it doesn't seem to be budging year after year after year. We have 7, 8 Australian films overall that hit cinemas, and then amongst them maybe 2 or 3 that are a genre style film. And
no, I totally agree. And in fact, if you ask me, it's getting worse, and that might be because there's so much content out there now. It feels like Screen Australia's kind of run up the white flag and said, well, we're just going to fund festival films, and if one pops, then we'll get away with it, you know, sort of thing. And I can understand that mentality because it's very hard to compete against an industry that is a real, very big money-making industry like Hollywood, where they just throw so much money at marketing. They really do. They know that if the film's going to cost 100 million, then they're going to throw 50 million in marketing at it. So that's not our mentality in this country, and that, I think, holds us back. Although, you know, it's hard to know where you get that money from, but I think we need to do more marketing, really.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for talking to me today. Great to see another Australian genre film. I'm always a fan of just that fact alone. So all the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Great talking to you.
You too.
Cheers, mate.